Welcome to the video lecture on using the group by clause and the having clause. So previous to this we have seen the use of functions in SQL. So I'm going to go, so this is an extension of the use of what were known as aggregate functions, like the count function. So if I click on Query Design, again I'm going to close the Show Table dialog box. I'm going to go into SQL View, and I'm going to shrink the query window down, and I'm going to use the customer T table as an example. So here we've got customers that are in various states. So let's do this. I want to select the count from customer T. All right, so if I do that, I get what's known as a scalar aggregate, right? A one record aggregate value, which basically tells me this is the count of all the records in this table. I can combine aggregate functions actually. I can go back to SQL View, and I could also use averages. This isn't going to make a lot of sense in this case, but I can take the average of customer ID, right? And when I run that, I'm going to get, again, now I get two scalar aggregates. I get the count as 16, and I get the average as 8.5. Okay? For the rest of this, I'm only going to use one. I'm going to get rid of the average. I just wanted to point that out. So now what you may say is, well, how many customers do I have for any given state? So I can do that by putting in a where clause, where customer state equals NY. Right? When I run that, I get 2. So now I know I have 2 customers in that state. Well, what if I want to get the counts of state, the counts of customers by state? Notice I use the by very strongly. So if I go back into SQL View, you may say to yourself, well, you know, I'll just add customer state up here. Right? And run that. Now I get an error message So I tried to execute a query that does not include the specified expression customer state as part of an aggregate function. So what's happening here is that I've got a scalar aggregate function, right, count, which is going to try to return one record, and I've got a regular field, customer state, that's trying to return 16 records. And the database is getting confused. It doesn't know what to do, so it kicks an error message. What we have to do is we have to use what's known as the group by clause. So any field that is used with an aggregate function has to be put into the group by clause. So in this case, I've got an aggregate function count, and I've got a non-aggregate function column called customer state. So I have to group by customer state. Okay, so now I'm going to select count, customer state, count and customer state from customer T, but I have to group by the customer state in order for it to know what to do with the aggregate function. This is known as a vector aggregate. A vector aggregate is an aggregate function that actually is returning multiple rows. All right, so in this case, we see now, and this is much more useful. I mean, now I can see that I have 2 customers from California, I've got 1 customer from Colorado, I've got 3 customers from Florida. I can use an order by clause, right? So I can say order by count. Well, let's see if this works. I've never actually done that, but there we go. So it orders everything by the count. Now that's ascending, right? So I see that I have the most customers in Florida, and I have a bunch of states where I only have 1 customer. So if this is a marketing thing, you know, I want to find out where I need to do more work, and I need to do a lot more work in a lot more states. But instead of sorting, right, maybe I just want to find states that I need to do work in, right? So, right, I can't use a where clause because a where clause operates on data before it's aggregated. I have to use a having clause because until this data is aggregated, I don't know what the counts are. All right, the where clause would filter out, I want to see, customers from Florida, but I also need to know, but until I aggregate, I don't know that I have 2 in California. Okay, so I have to use the having clause because having works on aggregated data. So now let's go back to the SQL view, and this will be the last clause that we go over is the having clause. So it's having count equal to 1. Okay, so now when I run this, I only get the states that only have 1 customer. And I can do anything in that having clause. I can say where they're greater than 1 and run that. And now I get all of the states that I have more than 1 customer in them. And there are a variety of reasons for using the group by and the having clause to gather data out. But again, just remember that these are these are the most advanced things that we're going to be doing in SQL in this term. And that ends the video lecture associated with the group by and having clauses.